Yeah. Okay, we're ready when you
If to ask anything else, folks, whilst I email.
You can ask them if they have any questions. Say, do you have any questions for us?
And Qiru, do you have a link to your thesis somewhere? I don't think I got a link.
Overleaf, I think.
Okay,
Or I
that's
can
fine.
I
Yeah,
send
I
you.
have overleaf. So that's the latest one. Okay.
Yeah, Overleaf it should be the latest.
Okay, yeah. And also, I can only stay till 3, but that's a meeting from 3 onwards.
Okay, well, you're welcome to start. All right.
Okay, let me share my screen. Oops. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So, good afternoon. My name is Qiru Wang. This is my Viva presentation for my thesis, Visualization of Electronic Health Records. And let's begin by introducing my thesis background. So my PhD was partially funded by an EPR SRC grant, and the grant was led by my supervisor, Professor rlaramee, as the principal investigator, and the late Professor Damon Barrich as the co-investigator. My interest in this topic, data visualization, emerged during my master's study and was further inspired by my first job at Swansea University Medical School. And so this PhD serves as a continuation of my previous work. This thesis includes cross-disciplinary collaborations with many domain experts. The motivations and challenges behind the topic is stemmed from diverse literature sources, which are naturally cross-discipline, and the data acquisition process related to electronic health records, and the scalability issue we found from the explosive data growth and the diversity live in the EHR data we collected. And lastly, the evaluation process, where domain experts plays a key role in this. The structure of thesis is formed by 7 chapters, with starting by introduction. Then second chapter is a survey, which covers many up-to-date EHR literature. The third chapter is letter V's, which focuses on unstructured text data. And chapter 4 covers geospatial data. Chapter 5 covers long time series data, with chapter 6, a very special chapter, which I'll be introducing later. And lastly, the conclusion chapter. So beginning with EHR Star, which is an up-to-date survey focusing on EHR visualization. We conducted investigations over 100 papers and 8 previous surveys. And the contribution of this paper includes an up-to-date survey, a novel classification of literature, and a mini survey of open access EHR datasets. It also highlights future research directions and emerging opportunities. In this survey, we classify EHR literature by 6 major themes identified during our literature research process. These themes contain techniques adopted by different researchers from different fields to support EHR research. And then we have this novel classification by the Unified Medical Language System, UMLS, which is a collection of controlled vocabularies widely used in many fields. By doing so, we are able to classify literature with different research focuses and disciplines. This removes the barrier to enable cross-disciplinary research. And for the mini survey, because we saw a challenge in acquiring EHR data, so we conducted a mini survey of open access healthcare data. Finding those data is very time consuming and extremely challenging. So we hope this data survey provides a starting point for potential researchers to begin their development of visual healthcare data systems and form potential collaborations. The next chapter, which is called LetterVis, it is a visualization tool designed together with domain experts, including a practicing neurologist to assist in hypothesis generation and verification. LetterVis uses real-world clinical letters to evaluate our system, and we adopted this so-called letter space because it resembles the standard coordinate system used by physicians, clinicians, and nurses. LetterVis provides abstractions of unstructured clinical letters. There are 3 visual elements to facilitate data exploration. The global view provides an overview of all letters by visually summarizing key textual data. It enables focus plus context rendering through an element called centroids, which is main position of each text category. And the thumbnail view represents individual letters and provides the entrance to the corresponding focus view. So the focus view shows individual letters with individual samples being highlighted. And there is, LetterVis also supports advanced filtering and selection features via this matrix view, which helps user explore associations and patterns in drug code prescriptions, supporting comparative analysis across the entire dataset. And after matrix view, there's another view called drug chain view, which extracts all the drugs and prescriptions from the dataset. This view supports analyzing treatment patterns, identifying unusual prescription combinations, and detecting inconsistencies in the dataset. Lastly, there is a visual query feature which allows user to perform complex searches across the dataset using Boolean operators and grouping symbols. This feature enables targeted exploration of the dataset, making it easier for clinicians to discover critical patterns and relationships. Next chapter is Deemer's cartogram with rivers, which it is a new variant of Deemer's cartogram that incorporates natural features like rivers to improve readability and recognizability of the data. In this chapter, we explored geospatial visualization and its combination with EHR. So Deemer's cartogram with rivers implements a hybrid layout algorithm which combines cartogram generation with river representation. It preserves geographical accuracy while maintaining spatial relationships. We used an overlap removal algorithm to ensure clear and precise visual mapping of different nodes. In this paper, we conducted a user-centered evaluation with different EHR datasets. We designed an experiment which involved 24 participants for locationing task. By location task, I mean we ask user to identify the correct location of a node by showing them features and by hiding the features as well. So the result shows that Deemer's cartogram with rivers or use of rivers actually improved the accuracy of location tasks with reduced response time. Next chapter, we introduce time series maps, which focuses on long time series data. It offers a hierarchical visual design for long time series data with the ability to handle a large number of events extracted from the dataset. In this paper, we used 2 real-world blood glucose datasets recorded by continuous glucose monitors provided by domain experts and from another research paper. The design is actually formed by a domain expert who provided natural language description and sketches of what interests him. So we from his description, we formulated this event extraction plan, which extracted two types of events. For the first one is threshold based, where we adopted a sliding window approach. For the second one is called shape based events, where we use a library to calculate matrix profiles to achieve efficient extraction of shape based events. So we also conducted 3 case studies to demonstrate the effectiveness of our design. Multiple interview sessions with domain experts were conducted to obtain quantitative feedback and also iteratively improve our work. Next is a special chapter published during this PhD. It's called Ensemble-Vis. It's it was aimed to deliver visualization support to modelers who was working on this ABC SMC model, which stands for Approximate Bayesian Computation Sequential Monte Carlo Inference Model. What it does is it uses data related to COVID-19 collected in Scotland to predict potential future death. So the reason why this chapter is special is because all the requirements were always changing and they lack formal requirements gathering process. And there was also a dynamic group membership where researchers joining and leaving at different stages. And there was no certain project direction given at the time of writing. So in summary, my PhD focused on my PhD contributed a star report on EHRVs with novel classification, and we explored the visualization of different types of data, including unstructured text, geospatial, time series, and the important part of my journey is all the close collaborations with domain experts on both design and evaluation of my work. And lastly is a practical emergency data visualization during the COVID-19. And that's the end of my presentation. Did I make it in 15 minutes?
Yeah, I think it's more like a 10 minutes.
Okay,
11,
because I was trying to,
yeah, 11 minutes and 30 seconds.
yeah, I was trying to rush it through. Yeah.
In terms of like the presentation speed, I don't think it's that fast.
Okay.
Yeah, you can easily follow.
Okay, there are kind of two parts to the practice Viva. One is like feedback on the presentation itself, and then the other is actual practice questions. Do you have any preference, Wang? What would you like? Would you like the practice questions first or the presentation feedback first?
Questions first, please.
The practice questions.
Yes.
Okay, I'll start off and then I'll ask, you guys if you want to ask any practice questions. So first question now, the questions are, some of them are easy and some of them are difficult.
Okay.
Usually there are some weird questions that you just never would think of. So I've tried to put in a few weird questions, and they're usually centered around the why. Like, why did you do this? Anyways, first question is, what is an electronic health record?
Electronic health record, there's no, in our STAR report, we actually list down some definitions commonly used by researchers from different domains. So there's no standard definition of what an EHR record represents, but usually we refer to any digitized records of a patient's data or information. It can include your blood glucose reading or a hospital discharge letter or from a series of medical checks and everything generated, like MRI scans generated during the process.
Nice. Very good. By the way, I just as a before I forget, I was looking at your thesis before the presentation, and I like the thesis. It's a good thesis. So that's good. Yeah. When I look at it as a thesis, the body of work is quite nice. Yeah. Does anyone else want to take a turn? I have a list of 10 questions-ish, but if you guys want to rotate, or does anybody else want to ask questions?
Nope.
I don't mind rotating. We could do it that way.
Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Unless Kai wants to go. Did you want to go, Kai?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, my first question is, I also like the substance of the thesis. I thought it was a good substance, good amount of work. So I agree with what Bob said. I want to ask about page 7. All right. Maybe Kai better go first because I need to get my copy of the thesis open. Right.
I'll ask the next one. When was the first Viz conference?
That's a really odd one. I actually don't know.
Do you have any idea when the first visual? Because the reason I asked that is because you have a little bit of a history of visualization in your chapter 1. So like part of the history is first Viz conference. You're not allowed to Google it.
I think the first one wasn't called Viz, right?
Well, if it wasn't called Viz, then it wasn't the Viz conference. There was visualization research and research papers before the first Viz conference. But any ideas?
Without Googling, not really.
No, have a guess.
Okay.
Like in which
1980s?
1980s?
That's not a bad guess.
Because CGVC was around similar time, right?
Oh, the CGVC goes back to around 1980, I think.
Yeah, so roughly I would say that's the time.
So the first Viz conference was 1990, and it was the quote-unquote Viz conference, the IEEE Viz conference.
Okay, because what I noticed is usually they change their names along the time. So probably Viz wasn't called Viz.
It was actually called IEEE Visualization Conference, something like that, in 1990.
Okay.
I think it's good to know. It's good to have that somewhere in your brain. Okay, what is unique or special about text visualization? Why is that interesting? Why is that special?
Because talking about text visualization, we're talking about, from my understanding, at least 2 types of them. One is structured, another one is unstructured. For structured text visualization, it's usually easier because we know the structure of the data set and we know the meaning behind each different text category. And we can apply different frameworks and methods to analyze them in a systematic way. But for unstructured text data, it's really challenging because even the author of the data themselves, they have no clue what they are writing. They don't follow a standard procedure to generate those text data. So it's pretty tricky and challenging. From my survey process, literature research process, there are different techniques applied to unstructured text data. The most common one is called natural language processing, which unfortunately is being replaced by artificial intelligence these days. Even with natural language processing, NLP, is very challenging because it from my collaboration with domain experts, medical experts, it still requires a lot of them to manually label the data, which means they have to select this piece of text or phrase from the data and say, hey, this represents that. And it's a time-consuming process, and often it doesn't yield a good result. And that's why we are still, I would say it's still an unsolved challenge or problem in this domain, because you will never achieve like the accuracy where you get a person sitting in front of a computer and read the data. That's why we developed Lettervis. We are trying to simplify this manual label process by extracting as many categorized or labeled data as possible, so it accelerates the exploration of unstructured text data.
Very good, very good.
And often, and well, should I continue or should I, because I think I have more to talk about.
Is there anything else that's special about text data besides the fact that it's unstructured that makes it maybe a little bit more challenging?
It's the that was what I was going to continue. Because even with the same language, it could represent different things in different verticals. For example, terms in medicine is not necessarily same as, you know, what it is in visualization. Without consulting domain experts of relevant field, it's impossible for like researchers to truly understand what's buried in the data.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The uncertainty in the language is a very
Yes.
tricky aspect. Yeah. Anyone else? Do you want to ask a question, Chris?
Yeah. See, Wong, do you know who Mike Lynch is?
Mike Lynch.
Maybe kind of. Tries grinning.
Uh,
Mike Lynch was a English businessman who made a company called Autonomy, and it was in the news. It was in the news some time ago. Well, it was bought by Hewlett Packard, and Hewlett Packard then sued him because of. It was in the news. It was quite famous.
Oh, the guy that died?
I don't think he
on a boat,
a yacht accident or something.
Yeah, he died in Italy in a yacht, in his own like mega yacht.
Right. Yeah, he was basically in the news.
He was in a suit. He was in a lawsuit, right? Hewlett Packard was trying to sue him.
Yeah, Hewlett Packard wanted to sue him, but his company was working on unstructured data, and he was using Bayesian inference.
Yeah, Bayesian inference. Yeah.
I don't know anything about Bayesian inference, but I remember that news story.
Okay.
Are they going to ask something about Bayesian inference? I don't know.
It's unpredictable. I don't think it's predictable what they ask about.
Do you know anything about Bayesian inference, Wong?
Not actually. All I know is it takes a really long list of parameters, and it requires repeated simulations of the model, so-called model, and it yields different outputs. And each time the output is slightly different, you know, based on your even with the same input parameters, it yields different simulation results. So for our ensemble-vis paper, what happens is modelers perform 1,000 simulations for each set of parameters, and it gives slightly different results each time. So we have to present the results in a visual friendly way for them to analyze the effect of adjusting certain parameters and what it, you know, what could it do to the final outcome. And basically that's a process of verify and optimize parameters for their models. And maybe I remember during one of the meetings, they say, okay, we didn't know changing this parameter could lead to this, and that. But when it comes to the model itself, no, I don't know anything about it.
I just because Bob said unstructured data, I just immediately thought of
Yeah.
that company.
Well, I guess it's just some statistical model based on
It's based on probability.
base row.
Yeah.
Probably there are lots of companies working on unstructured data and text data.
Yeah. Bayesian is still very fundamental to everything, including the current AI boom we are experiencing.
So Bayesian inference somehow captured in any of the models which you use implicitly, maybe.
I know. My guess is it applies a certain statistical formulas to interpret the probability of some events when the input is this, and that.
Okay. So maybe I'll jump in. Like I don't really have. So maybe if I'm going to ask questions, my question is usually more specific to the kind of content of the thesis. So but it's maybe more like the comments to the presentation, which we said we're going to do later. But I don't know if I'm going to be around that long. So I think because you have a little bit of time, I would recommend actually highlighting a little bit more about the contribution of each of the work. What is the research contribution? So currently I'm hearing you are describing what the work is, but not kind of emphasizing on what are new in the work. I mean, if the reviewer reads the report properly and if you kind of understand the kind of literature, they should know. But it's always easier just to tell them, okay, what is the research contribution for each piece of the work? I think for the survey itself, it's probably easier, it's self-explanatory. But for all the other ones, so if I could ask a question, say, okay, what is the contribution of letterbiz and what is the contribution of the cartograms
Yeah,
and
I
so on and
think.
so forth. Yeah, but I think that's gonna take too much time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in order to make the presentation within 15 minutes, I just summarized all the contributions in my slide. I think it's let me
I think
share
the
my
slides, at least from
screen again.
my understanding, is more like what it is. Okay, what is letterbiz? Not necessarily says, okay, what's new in letterbiz, and the problem it solves.
Okay. So on the first slide of individual chapter, I always say this is a novel something.
Yeah.
And with like verbal explanation why it is novel. In this case, I say because we use letter space to visualize unstructured text as they resemble the standard coordination system used by doctors and clinicians.
Okay.
So I think that's the novelty mentioned in the paper itself as well.
Yes. I think maybe just for me, because I don't have the background, I don't know, like at the particular time, what is the latest stage for this particular problems.
I think we letterbiz is the first so-called letter space visualization tool for exploring unstructured text data.
What does letter space mean?
So, for example, because doctors or clinicians they compose notes or clinic letters using certain aspect ratio, like A4 size. So they always write letter using that screen space. So it's easier for them to read with the same screen space as well. That is why in this letter viz, well, let me go to the next one. So for example, here, everything is set to an A4 aspect ratio. So it's easier for them to read because they can remember here in this global view, where centroids represents different categories of data text extracted from all those letters. So they they probably have a rough sense where they're writing something there. If they're saying if at the very beginning they're mentioning a drug's name is very unusual because all the prescriptions are usually at certain place like in between, let's say, line 50 and line 80. So if it appears really early or really late in this letter, then it's actually considered an outlier. So that's what we gathered from the feedback. And through letter reads, we actually assisted the clinicians to discover some really unusual clinic letter, where it mentioned like really odd combinations of what they refer to as co-prescriptions of drugs. And they actually looked into letter and say, hey, there was a mistake in this letter, and this drug should never be prescribed together with that one.
Yeah, I think that certainly gives much more kind of, at least for me, a better understanding what the research contribution could be. And then,
Okay. Do
and
you think
also
I
again,
should do you think I should
Yeah.
add that story into my presentation?
I guess depends on the time limit, right? So
Yeah,
one is
I
depends on
was
time
worried about
limit.
I
Yeah.
couldn't make it.
But if we, I
I've
think,
asked them how much time they want.
Okay.
So I guess we'll have to wait and see what they say about time. But
Yeah.
For me, that would be better if that's in the presentation, because
Okay.
then we don't have to ask about it. So
Okay.
I mean,
So because
an easy fix
I think
is to just add that word contributions above the 3 bullet points, right?
okay.
Yeah.
so yeah,
Well, because I can make it 11 minutes, I can also make it 60 minutes. It really depends on how long I will be given.
Yeah.
I think so for me, my suggestion would be think about the background of the people there. I don't know who they are. Are they familiar with the domain? So how much details you need to include for them to appreciate the contribution?
Okay.
So at least for me, say what you just added give you much more context. What I tried to say before was currently it describes what does this do or what the visualization represents, but it didn't tell you why that's important, what problem it solves, what's new thing it brings to the visualization techniques. And then depends on the background of people, they might or might not know. I think if it's just a general visualization kind of academic, they might not know why these things are important. And then related to this, for example, you emphasize, okay, it's important to keep it A4 ratio. Then you might want to say, okay, why it's difficult? I assume, say, most display are kind of by default, it's not that different from A4. Like the screen ratio, maybe not perfectly A4, but the ratio is not that different. So why is that very difficult or research-wise challenging to do those things? Yeah.
Yeah, in like when you write the papers, you have a bulleted list of contributions, right, Wang?
Yes.
And
Yes.
you have that word contributions in the paper, so you may as well put it on the slides too.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, so I'm not sure if it's necessary. Again, it's about adding more to the presentation, but you might want to add a little bit, like very briefly, what is the context? Like what was the latest work at that time, and they can show you and show what improvement you made. But again, it depends on the time. Yeah. Oh, and just one last thing I want to suggest in terms of the presentation, include a publication list just on one slide. I think that's useful. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
to
So
remind
somewhere
them. I know you like
at the
that
very
things.
end.
Yeah. For example,
Okay.
very end will be very good because you can just leave it on there and then go into the questions. They can actually look at it.
I
They
realized
should know.
I was missing a thank you slide at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of my more kind of general kind of comment.
Yeah, well, if we're sticking to the presentation feedback, there are two more things. you don't want to use that phrase. I believe you used the phrase geographic accuracy, Wang, when you were describing.
Okay.
We don't want to use that phrase. Remember that? I don't know if you remember the authors, the reviewers not being happy with that. You can use topological accuracy if you want,
Oh,
but I wouldn't say geographic accuracy or
okay. That's
geospatial.
okay.
You could also use the word neighborhood preservation, the phrase neighborhood preservation, if you want.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know.
Because
Hopefully,
yeah, because well, topological accuracy, that's even trickier to justify, I think. I think we ran into this problem during the writing as well, because essentially we're introducing a topological feature, but we are not improving its accuracy.
yeah, we'd have to clarify that. I guess the way I think of it at least is we try to ensure that south-facing neighbors remain south-facing neighbors, west-facing neighbors remain west-facing neighbors, and so like
Okay.
and so on for each of the four directions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then
Okay.
the topological accuracy is we try to we make sure that regions north of a river remain north of a river and don't cross the
Mm-hmm.
boundaries of a river. That's what we mean by
Mm-hmm.
topological
Mm-hmm.
accuracy.
Yeah, or I can just skip that sentence
Yeah, you
just
can.
without mentioning anything
Yes,
about the
yes.
accuracy of
You could, yeah, you could replace it with a sentence that says something like cartograms have the advantage that they make more
oh
efficient use of
I,
screen space.
actually what I believe what I said was preserving geographical accuracy while maintaining spatial relationships. That's in my presenter's notes.
Okay. Yeah, well, you can remove that phrase,
Yeah,
geographical accuracy.
yeah,
You could
yeah.
say preserving local neighborhoods. That would be a
So
good
yeah,
phrase.
so maintaining.
Wong, you said you could remove the sentence. I mean, just
And
based on what I can see right now, it would be better
mhm,
to say everything which Bob just said instead of
okay,
removing the sentence, because
topological.
that's
Yeah.
quite stimulating.
Hmm.
It's going to stimulate a lot of questions. And I think
Okay.
that's the whole point, right? The presentation is to get everybody warmed up. So I wouldn't
Okay.
remove it. I would try and get it in
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, I mean, from what I remember, so is there any kind of, so obviously there will be error introduced. That's the thing that
Yes.
has to be there because if you want to kind of do some deformation or change the position of the regions. I think the point would be that we try to minimize first, try to minimize the errors.
Yes.
Do we
Yes.
provide any kind of
I wouldn't
bound
say
income?
that either. I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
I would say you give the amount of error over to the user. You let the user adjust or control the amount of error.
Mhm.
That's the magic phrase and the most correct phrase. Yeah. So the user has control over the distance, how far the distance is from the original position to the final position, or the amount of screen space used, and so on, the amount of distortion. But yeah, we don't try to minimize any errors. We shift the amount of error over to the user. Yeah.
Okay, but actually, my question was like, I don't remember. Is there any bound in terms of how much error it introduces, or like what?
Yes, we can actually set the max error or displacement.
So that's what Bob was talking about. So
Yeah.
that let
Yes,
users
it's a
to Yeah.
user controlled parameter. Yes, that's
Yeah.
the key.
Okay.
So
Mm.
yeah, so for the amount of displacement is set by the user.
Okay. Yeah.
That is likely to be a question. Very
Okay.
likely, like how much error does your cartogram introduce? Like what kinds of error does it introduce? And you always want to have the fallback position of the user controls the amount of error. If the user really wants, they can set the error to 0 and then the cartogram doesn't move. Like all of the regions stay in their original position, but then you'll have the same problems as the original choropleth. So there's always a trade-off between error and screen space utilization. It's always a trade-off. But that's very, very likely to come up, I imagine. Yeah.
Space
Okay.
utilization is a good one.
Yeah. Yep. I would also, just in presentation feedback, I would characterize the RampViz project. You circle around it, and of course I understand what happened and everything. But like, I think the phrases I would use are the unplanned nature of the RampViz. Like RampViz, one of the characteristics, the defining characteristics of RampViz is its unplanned nature. It was really like laying down the train tracks as the train is moving. I could even imagine putting that phrase in there.
Yeah, it's you're actually looking at it, laying down the tracks as the train was running.
Exactly. And that could be helpful. And then the reason you would say is it was a response to the lockdowns. That's why it had the unplanned nature. Okay. Next question on the thesis. That's all I have about the presentation. Does anybody want to say anything else about the presentation?
No.
Why does the EHR star have 6 subsections? You have like this machine learning subsection, natural language processing. Why does it have those?
Because well, first by investigating EHR literature, we found like different themes, different work published by different group of researchers from different domains. That's what makes this survey's process so challenging and complicated. We are essentially looking at it's actually more than 6, but we categorize them into 6 major themes who appeared frequently during our research process. Those themes contains techniques adopted by EHR researchers to analyze EHR data sets. That's the reason why we use this classification.
Okay. Yep.
And those six of them are what I would call relatively mature. And by mature, I mean there are many papers published under this theme, and they have really established I would call it ecosystem where you can build EHR systems using existing work published by others. It's not like rlaramee where we literally had to build it from scratch because no one was doing anything similar to it.
Where do your contributions fit into these subsections?
Which paper, which section are we talking about
So
here?
for example, does rlaramee fall into one of these subsections?
I would say it falls under visual analytics and clustering and others, because we during the EHR stars research process, we actually discovered many papers where they don't fit into any of those categories, but well, they never say that their contributions lie in certain, you know, themes listed here, but they're actually using techniques from visual analytics or clustering or some other visualization techniques. And but although Letterbase adopted many techniques from natural language processing, but its focus was never to advance natural language processing techniques. So that's why I don't categorize it under NLP.
Okay. It just, I don't know if it's useful or not, but I consider if I was going to put it in the star, I would actually put it on the natural
Comparison?
language processing.
Yeah, I know. It does have a lot of NLP elements, but the problem is it never add anything new to NLP. It didn't advance the field of NLP.
At least, yeah, that would be a fun discussion. The way I see it is it adds a visual interface onto NLP. So it's like almost like visible NLP. Anyways, that would be an interesting discussion. That could turn out to be an interesting discussion during the Viva.
Do you have a PowerPoint?
But yeah, somewhere here. Is,
Put it in there.
yeah.
Thanks.
But yeah, at least in my mind, that's how I see it. Okay, what about the cartograms paper? Where would you put that?
Oh, sorry. Can I ask a quick question about that star?
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Wang, is that EH star EHR star classification? Is that your contribution, which is in your thesis? Did you contribute that from your PhD research?
Yes, I believe so, because here we mentioned there's a novel classification of 51 literature based on those 6 themes, as well as the unified medical language system, which no one has ever done that in the field of data visualization or EHR visualization.
Do you hope that somebody else will use your EHR star classification?
Not so much about those 6 themes listed here, but I think people are already starting to use UMLS to classify literatures, like in
My
computer
knowledge
science,
might be a
because I
bit too
think
weak.
yeah, because
Maybe I'm getting the
what
wrong end of the
happens
stick.
what happens is there are many like many domains related to EHR visualization. They are doing visualizations without realizing they're, doing visualizations. And also for these research, by these I mean visualization, by these researchers, they are doing EHR work without realizing they are doing EHR work because
I want
there
to ask-
lacks a standard.
What I want to ask is, can you evaluate your EHR star classification? It seems like it should be a contribution to from your research. So you're missing, if you're not listing it as a contribution, you're missing a bit of a trick here, I think. It seems to me like it's got some value to it.
Evaluation, that's because being a star report, how do we evaluate the that's a tricky one. Because we actually do evaluate individual literature under the classification, but the report also
what I'm asking is, if it's a classification, can you evaluate it as a classification? Is it a good classification?
Sorry, I need to go to another meeting now. Yeah, but yeah, that could be an interesting question come up.
Yeah, that's
But it's
a tricky one.
different one. Yeah.
Well, I don't mean
Yeah.
it to be tricky.
Good
I'm actually saying you've got something of value, and you should lift it up a bit and say, look, it's value. Which it looks like you haven't done that already.
No.
You're kind of letting it. You're kind of.
Underselling.
Yeah.
Underselling.
Or not even recognizing that it's something to sell.
So while we're going in circles, this is coming back to something that Kai said. In that slide you showed us on the EHR star, you need to add a phrase, the contributions phrase again. You got those bulleted points.
Yeah.
And then you have to say EHR star contributions, add that phrase above the list of bullet points.
Yeah, just add a subtitle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, unified
again,
medical language system, is that?
Those are all contributions of his star, their actual contributions. So the list is right there, but that message that their contributions is not kept coming through in the presentation.
So unified medical language system, did you create that one?
No, it was a system created by someone else. It was created by a medical agency in the US.
So to answer your question, Chris, and so you're ready for this too, Wang, there are at least two ways to evaluate the classification. The first way is by taking future publications and seeing if they fit and how well they fit into that classification. So there have been a number of papers published since the star was published, and you could then look at them and say, okay, how well do they fit into these categories? That's one way. Another way is this has been published. So a group of an IPC has gone through this and either approved or disapproved. They've performed their own evaluation, a group of international experts, and they've all given it their stamp of approval in terms of how good it is. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been published in one of the top journals. So those are at least two ways to evaluate the classification. There's probably more ways, but at least you can answer the question.
Right.
Do you imagine anything else? Are you imagining any other evaluation strategies?
What are the other alternative classification schemes?
Okay, yeah, there are others. Do you want to try to answer that one first, Wang?
Alternative, I think it was purely by the nature of the underlying data set used, which somehow overlaps with the UMLS, but in a not so organized or controlled way, because they refer, for example, diabetes as diabetes. Someone refers that to type 2 diabetes. It's not really controlled, so there's no interoperability between different literature. So naturally, when they are searching for related work, they couldn't find the related work.
Another possibility is, yes, I mean, obviously there are other classifications, but another thing that we can point to is the previous survey. So there have been previous surveys on this topic, and they have different classifications.
Yes.
They all have different classifications. So of course there are alternatives. A data-centric classification could be quite interesting, actually, and a UMLS centric classification could be interesting.
I would say UMLS is actually data-centric classification.
Okay.
Because it implies that the research is working on this specific vertical of DHR.
So why did you not use the existing classification schemes? Why did you develop this one? What did you get from using this one, and what could other people get from using your one?
it's
It's all kind of
it's
the same question,
because
right? What's the
yeah.
value to it?
It's because the previous survey before EHR star, I believe it was published over 8 years ago, the latest one on EHR literature. And since then, there have been there has been so many new publications. So I think there was a need for an up-to-date survey.
Sounds
And
important. Is that in your thesis?
yes,
Okay. I didn't see that.
and also and also the reason why we have 6 major themes is because many of them they have witnessed like advancements during the past 8 years. And for example, no machine learning was was already popular 8 years ago, but not many people applied that to EHR visualization or combined machine learning with EHR visualization. So with machine learning gain tractions, naturally there are many literature which was unsurveyed by previous surveys. And that is why the previous classifications they also need a refresh.
Yep. Another advantage of this classification, just to my 2 pence.
Mhm.
One of the nice things about this is it brings the related papers together. So if
Mhm.
2 papers have used machine learning on EHR stars, then it brings them together and it lets you put them side by side in the literature. And that's another nice like consequence of this particular classification.
Mhm.
You could call it like technology centric
Mhm.
classification. So if 2 people are using similar technologies, they appear next to each other or in the same cluster of papers.
Mhm. Yeah, and also this work we classify, they don't necessarily fall under one thing here. I think we had this system where it has a primary theme and it also has secondary themes. So a paper could be classified under like multiple themes here because they actually adopted multiple techniques from different themes. So that further increases the chance of, discovering related work.
Have you ever published a literature review, Chris?
Yeah.
What was the topic?
It was on. It was a collection of MP complete puzzles.
Okay. Was it part of your thesis?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Nice.
So I was kind of conjecturing that they were quite popular. Things like Rubik's Cube, Sudoku, Tetris, the video game Tetris. I was conjecturing that they were popular because they were MP complete.
I see. That's
I didn't have
interesting.
any evidence about it, so I just kind of collected it together and
Try to argue it.
so it came from a chapter in my thesis,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
somebody else after my PhD did follow on that work a little bit. So it kind of fit into my PhD.
That's nice. That's really good. It's unusual. Yep. Okay, that's good. How I noticed you have a nice literature browser, Wang. How long is that going to remain online for?
Uh, well, it depends on when Microsoft goes bankrupt.
Yeah. Okay,
Because
so
it's being hosted on GitHub for free. So if GitHub is shut down, then it's gone.
okay.
Also, the problem with should I be mentioning this? The problem with this browser is it's not being updated, so it stays, where it is now,
Yeah.
you
No,
know,
that's fine.
with
That's
other
fine.
data. Yeah.
I've got some complaints from some colleagues about my previous star projects no longer being online. The Swansea ones.
Okay.
Okay, here's a tricky one. Is there anything, what would it take for UMLS to be adopted by the Viz community?
Well, from the start process, survey process, I think it is already being adopted by the base community. Maybe not so popular, but because nowadays I think data visualization or any other discipline, it's very unlikely you're working on one discipline at a time. It's always cross-disciplinary research. So when it comes to EHR or medical or bioscience or anything, you are bound to have some interoperability with other researchers. And this UMS is the common language spoken by them.
Mhm.
So we, as these researchers, I think it's very important to, adopt those language system.
Okay.
Well, actually, I saw a few papers cited EHR star. They are already using UMIS, so that's a good start.
Do you want to ask a question, Chris, or do you want me to ask a question? Okay, going on to the next chapter, or the cartograms chapter. Does adding rivers to cartograms improve legibility?
Based on our evaluation findings, yes, it does add legibility to the cartogram when combined with the EHR data sets.
Okay, so improved accuracy and improved response time. Yeah.
Yes.
Any
Yes.
other evidence besides the improved accuracy and response time?
Not I can think of right now. It's
You could add anecdotal or like participant feedback as evidence.
okay. Participants feedback. Yeah. We do have that. I didn't put them here. Yeah. But I thought that one is a bit like stretched.
Yeah,
Because I think
it's not as good as empirical evidence, but like
yeah.
traditionally it is mentioned. If you look at like an HCI paper, there's always the participant feedback. Like we
Okay,
got
but
we got our mother to say that she liked the river. No, don't mention that.
yeah. So it's yeah.
And my mom and my dad and my brothers all like. But
Okay.
anyways, it's traditionally it's always mentioned.
Okay.
Okay, what is an event? Moving on to the next chapter.
Uh time series map.
Yeah, what is an event in the
And well, an event can be well, here is the hierarchy of events. An event can be a sharp rise in blood glucose reading, or a sharp fall, and it also can be a bell curve where it's like a Gaussian curve.
Do you have some sort of a
Gaussian.
definition of an event?
Not in the presentation, but yes, in the writing, I think I defined the event. But but it is really a tricky thing to define. So events, they're basically a group of readings in the data set where we represent imply something.
Yeah, be ready for that question.
Because I think the word is too generic, is kind of tricky to define it.
If you want, like what I generally recommend is
Mhm.
if you think that you think, oh, this is gonna probably be a question, you can prepare a slide that answers it. In
Okay.
you have like a stack of slides that are already prepared to
Mhm.
answer targeted
Mhm.
questions. And
Mhm.
you could prepare a slide for all those targeted questions that we've asked today.
Mhm.
That would be good, and then you won't have to stress about it. You'd be like, okay,
Okay.
I don't have to remember the definition of an event because I have a slide that answers this question already. Okay. Do you have any questions, Chris?
If you're going to move on to the next chapter, I do, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any more chapter specific questions. I have bigger picture questions, but no chapter.
Okay.
No.
So I want to know, Wang,
Mhm.
so you had a chapter on letter viz, which we've already
Yeah.
talked about, and you had a chapter on the, forgive me if my terminology isn't right, I'm quite new to this field. So you're improving the legibility of cartograms.
Deemer's cartogram, yes. A variant of cartogram.
But these two chapters, so I didn't read the thesis carefully. I didn't have time, but I did read it. And so both of these two chapters, I had the same question, which is, what is the problem you're trying to solve, and what are the other approaches for solving the same problem, and how does your approach compare?
So for letter viz, because no one has done anything similar to this, so it's the problem we were trying to solve is the clinicians do not have a visual way to generate hypotheses based on the unstructured text data and verify them, and that's the problem we are trying to solve, I would say. And for Deemer's cartogram, it's because for Deemer's cartogram, uh, one must choose, one must balance geograph. Should I be saying this? One must balance between geographical accuracy and topological accuracy. And by adding a third element, which is the topological features like rivers, we are actually kind of improving topological, I mean, geographical accuracy, because now they have a feature to refer to help them to improve the so-called legibility of their cartograms. So that's I would say that's the advantage of our work compared to a pure Deemer's cartogram.
Okay, maybe I should have asked this separately about the two chapters. So I'm just going to focus on the viz, letter viz chapter. So
Okay.
and I don't really know anything about this field at all. So apologies for my not very clear questions. But I just did a Google search for visualizing unstructured medical letters, and there's quite a lot of papers here. But you said it hadn't been done before, so I'm. That doesn't sound the same.
Well, visualizing medical letters. Yes, they have. Well, it's actually pretty funny because if you're typing visualizing medical letters, the first one comes up is letter is summarized by Google AI.
It's not what I've got.
It's let me take a screenshot actually. This is actually good. So they're using different techniques to visualize unstructured text data. Something like a heat map, which isn't really how do I put this? It's not revolutionary.
Yeah.
Because if we are looking at this problem from a non-visualization researcher's perspective, anyone who used like those classic visual designs like a line chart or bar chart, they will be claiming that they are doing visualizations for their data. But in our investigation, it's like no one adopted novel visual designs to address this problem. So they're always adopting they're always using like classic visual designs instead of like normal designs we built from scratch.
I think we have a little bit of a time pressure, but I have to be a little bit direct, and sorry about that.
Okay.
So if I assume,
it's fine.
from what you just said, it sounds like there is a list of other researcher output where they visualize medical unstructured data in medical letters. And if I assume that that is true, and you said that yours is the first one to use a novel approach, my question is your approach better? And your answer cannot include the word novel.
Can you repeat the last two sentences again?
Is your approach better than the existing approaches to the problem? And in your answer, you cannot include the word novel.
Okay. Well, but because I would say our work is novel because we're trying to advance the state of EHR visualization. So we are always assessing the novelty from a visualization's perspective. And that is why we built this tool from scratch with the input from domain experts. We gathered requirements from them and we used their feedback to improve the work. And nobody has ever used this form of visualization or visual design to assist hypothesis generation in using unstructured text data.
So is this new approach better?
Well, based on our evaluation, yes. Based on our
sorry, yeah. Was that qualitative?
Yeah, it was qualitative evaluation with two, actually three, but we only mentioned two in the paper. So one of them is actually a practicing neurologist, and the data set, the unstructured clinic letters we used were actually real world data provided by this domain expert. That's why we have to hide the information here. And all this over, it was close to 300 letters, 280 something. They were all real world letter written by neurologists on epilepsy, neurological condition. And we basically have this iterative process with the neurologist to get a feedback and improve our work and demonstrate our progress and ask for their opinion.
So the qualitative analysis actually says better?
Well, because they have never seen anything like this, so it's you can't be better than nothing, right? It's basically based on
You can't visualize it using other approaches. No.
Because what they have been using is just line charts and bar charts. So
Okay,
in that sense, yes, it is better
how is it better?
because it enables new possibilities. Because with bar charts and line charts, it's impossible to visualize those textual data. Like it's impossible to identify outliers from a bunch of like unstructured text. Because traditionally what they have been doing is, okay, this patient is given this, and that. And for example, he lost 5 pounds or 5 kilos during the past year, and that's about it. But by using our tools, we can see the combination of different drugs might lead to something unexpected along the way. And maybe a cohort of patients given the same drug, there was an outlier who was not responding well to this drug, and this could be because she was pregnant. That was like real world hypothesis verified using LetterVis.
Maybe that's in the thesis and I missed it. But
Yeah, so basically by using LetterVis enables those possibilities where classic visual designs were unable to achieve.
I also had the same question for the using rivers to improve the legibility of cartograms chapter. So has anybody else tried to improve the legibility of cartograms?
Yes.
And
Yes,
does your improvement, is it better than theirs?
Yes. Well, the previous work was done by Bob and his previous PhD candidate as well. Yes, and I think in terms of improvements, I would say the biggest improvement is actually the screen space utilization and the dynamic what do we call that? Constraint on those nodes, on individual nodes. So this hybrid layout algorithms takes features like rivers as the constraint to limit the crossing of nodes to the wrong side of the rivers. So in order to preserve so-called legibility or accuracy, if I can use that word.
It's possible
So
that
that's
I
the
missed
input.
it when I was reading the thesis, because I didn't read it very carefully. But I think it's important to situate your contributions in the existing state of the art. How does it compare? I don't think it has to be better, but I think it does have to be compared. That's my opinion.
I mean, it certainly is compared in the thesis. There's obviously,
I think it is compared.
It's, there's a special section for every chapter, how it compares to the previous literature. For LetterVis, you could mention, Wang, like one of the big advantages that LetterVis has over the previous literature is the possibility to get an overview of the data. So there is no previous system or comparable system that really provides an overview of all the letter data. And while LetterSpace is the first one that provides an overview. So that's a fundamental kind of advantage that it has over the previous literature.
Okay.
For the Demers project, the fundamental basis of comparison is another cartogram that doesn't have rivers. So all previous cartograms in the world, in the history of visualization, have not contained rivers at all. So this is a fundamentally new addition to the cartogram. And it makes a lot of sense because you can imagine a traditional map of the UK with no rivers, right? And adding rivers to the map of the UK is clearly going to improve the legibility.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
So based on that logic, we thought, okay, adding rivers to cartograms should improve their legibility. So those are the fundamental comparisons that you can make, Wang, to answer Chris's questions.
It might be just that I didn't read it carefully in the thesis.
Yeah, there's no guarantee that the examiners are going to read the thesis. You know, the only thing they have to do is fill out a report. It doesn't say you must read every page of the thesis. They're supposed to, but people are too busy. They do have to write a report. So if they overlooked a section, you might have to point it out to them. You have to point out these things and make them, explicit. You still have to be able to handle the questions.
Yeah. So, for example, Wang, what page in your thesis do you state that you compared it to the literature? I mean, just playing devil's advocate.
Which the Karukan paper?
I'm just in your Viva, you could refer to a given page in your thesis and point to
that's
it
a good one.
to say to the examiner, here I've written it. It's in the thesis.
Yes, that's true.
So,
you can point.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So it just means that you should be quite familiar with where it is. But I think you will be because you wrote it.
Yeah. That's true. The table of contents will also have that information.
Okay, yeah, I should probably write down the page numbers where those things were discussed.
Do you have any more chapter specific questions?
I did have one. I've got one chapter specific question, and then that's it. That's what I've got.
Okay. Yep.
Shall I do that now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
So
I don't have any more chapter specific questions.
In your last chapter, where you were talking about the study you did during COVID, and I'm quoting from the conclusion of that chapter, you said multitude of uncertainties and challenges. And I guessed it meant that you didn't know what the data was and you didn't know what needs to be visualized about the data.
Well, it was like...
let me finish the quote. And then you said, we hope our experience serves as a valuable source of insight. When I was reading that, again, maybe I didn't read the chapter carefully enough, but I'm wondering, what is the insight? Can you not summarize it in the conclusion? What insight can you present from that experience?
Like, by insight, I guess we meant this laying down tracks as the train was running type of work because there was actually a really small vertical of data visualization. It's called emergency data visualization, where it doesn't sound like COVID emergency, but it's still kind of emergency. It's basically quick response to events. So we need to quickly generate data visualizations to support decision making during those emergencies. And the insights of this paper is basically we are having so many uncertainties, and we are working fully remote, and the project involves collaborations from domain experts with very, very different backgrounds. And that I think that's the insights we were referring to in the paper.
Those are two situations. I don't think they're insights, they're situations. What's the insight? Okay. What did you learn?
So what I learned from that project is basically how to communicate with non-base background researchers and show them what can visualization do, can practically support their work, their research. It's like communication between non-base researchers, explaining them, for example, what is parallel coordinate and what does it render, and why you should be using this to analyze your model input parameters. Because many of them have never seen parallel coordinates before in their life, and they don't know what it does and why they should be using it.
Did you use any specific tools for fast prototyping or
No, I built everything from scratch.
standard tools?
Yes, and it was like a really popular library called D3, which is for visualization, for building visualizations.
What did you do differently during this project compared to the other projects detailed in your thesis? Because of the nature of laying down the track as you were going, what did you do differently? What did you learn from the project?
Well, first of all, this chapter is very different from others. It did not aim to it did not focus on novelty per se, because it was trying to solve a real world problem with the limited amount of resources and information we had in hand. So it didn't focus on so-called novelty, and it's more of like an empirical or practical solution to address a problem. So that's what makes it different from other chapters.
I'm still wondering, what insight did you get? What about some specific, what challenges did you have? What did you overcome during it? If it happened again, what would you do differently because you've done it once and you know how to solve stuff?
Well, I hope it never happens again. But if there's another emergency like COVID happening again, then I would say we are already better prepared, because we already know how. For me, from my perspective, I already know how modelers work. If they are still using this Bayesian computation model, I already know their workflow. It's basically generate a list of parameters and just keep it running until they see something really useful. But their way of just use a synthetic data set and just it's like throw a dice. They're basically hoping for something that will work, but with the help of visualization, they actually know how to, well, they actually have a more efficient way to adjust those parameters to in order to obtain a useful model. So if next time COVID happens again, then we can reuse this whole uh, probability prediction plus data visualization to maybe to shorten the time for their convergence of model.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's everything I had.
And also,
was that good? Was that good enough?
Just so I think the idea is to prepare you for
some challenging questions. The other
Yes.
thing, if I was answering that question, I would also mention the software engineering process. So, like,
Okay.
one of the insights we gained from that experience is a new kind of model for the software engineering process. So the typical software engineering process, or the classical one, starts out with this so-called requirement specification, but that whole requirement specification changes.
What's missing? Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of missing. It's replaced with a different process, which probably is, we call it something in the thesis. I believe we call it knowledge exchange. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to ask the domain experts targeted questions that say, okay, why did you collect this data? What did you collect this data for? And what questions are you trying to answer? Like, what goals are you trying to reach by collecting this data? And that's a kind of knowledge exchange that goes from the domain experts to the visualization experts. That replaces the traditional requirement specification phase And then the next knowledge exchange phase is from the Viz researchers back to the domain experts that say we don't know anything about Viz. What do you have for us? What can you do for us? And so there's the knowledge transfer on the other direction that says, okay, you have these questions you're trying to answer. You have this kind of data that you're producing. Here are our suggestions in terms of what we think is going to be appropriate for from a visualization perspective. So the whole requirements specification phase changes this to a knowledge exchange phase. Essentially, that's one of the insights, let's say. Yeah.
Yeah.
The traditional software engineering sort of model goes out the window in some ways. That's like one of the insights. Okay, some bigger questions. What advice would you give to yourself if you were starting over? If you could talk to yourself in 2019, what advice would you give to yourself?
Am I allowed to be funny during the Viva?
Yes, I think so. Yes, because these
Yeah, I would say first, never choose data visualization because it was too challenging.
Okay.
And second is basically be patient because very often I rushed into like let's say methods of doing things, which I later found I could have if I were more patient, I can always find better solutions, better methods.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually wasted a lot of time, precious time, on
Okay.
many, wrong methods chosen by
Okay.
myself.
Mhm.
And also, well, I think that's about it. Yeah, patience.
If so on the database being too difficult, what would you suggest something else? Would you say don't do database but do this instead?
Well, I think no, everything is about data nowadays, but data visualization is a very saturated, mature field of study. And if you want to propose something novel, it's always going to be you're collaborating with somebody else from another field of study, and you actually have to spend more time. You're not actually just focusing on data visualization. You also have to explore your domain experts' background and their research and everything. It makes the whole thing more complex.
Yeah, that's true. It is a difficult subject.
Yeah.
But I mean, a good follow-up question. I mean, this we have to stop soon anyways, but like,
Yeah.
do you think that the easiest path is always the best path? Is that the hidden message in there?
Wait, can you repeat it again? What best path?
So you mentioned that you wouldn't suggest DataViz because it's too difficult.
Mhm.
Is that suggesting that all like the easiest path is the best path?
Not really. I guess it really depends on what opportunities you have. And for me personally, at that time, I think data visualization made sense because I had a master's in data visualization, and my first job was on medical data analysis, which involved some level of data visualizations as well. So it was back then it was the best opportunity I could have. But if you say could I be doing a natural language processing PhD, possible, but that would be really bad these days because that field, in my opinion, is going to be replaced by artificial intelligence. Whereas data visualization still has its own unique advantage, it's irreplaceable. As of now, yeah.
Okay. And last question is, do you want to be involved in any way in Euroviz 2026?
What way?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway, anyway.
Yeah, if I'm still going to be in Nottingham, definitely, yeah, I can actually help out in person.
Okay,
Well,
that would be
if you are
great.
talking about technical support, then it depends on what level of support I'm going to provide.
We can discuss it. We can discuss like what role you're interested
Yep.
in. There are multiple roles, multiple options. But
Okay.
like I can imagine you being something like the coordinator of the student volunteers, for example.
Okay.
That would be, I think that would be a good fit for you. Could be.
Yeah.
But yeah, like having you involved would be nice.
Yeah.
We'll put you on the local organization committee as a starting point and then work out the details later.
Sure.
Okay, I'm finished. Any questions for us?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how did I do today?
I think it was good. I think it was good. I think
Yeah.
your thesis is very strong. Don't be afraid to like review it a little bit, and maybe just read the introduction of each chapter, refresh your memory.
Sure.
And prepare some extra slides for questions that you might be worried about or you want to be ready for. But overall, I think you're in very good shape. You're in very good shape. Like,
Okay.
yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Chris?
Just what I said earlier. That I said that the content in the thesis was a nice amount of content. Yeah.
I was
So you
probably
asked
underselling
about.
it.
Say again.
I was underselling my thesis most of the time during the
Oh.
presentation.
Maybe I misinterpreted what you were saying about the classification scheme. It looked to me like it was a contribution of your work, another contribution.
Okay. I should probably phrase it like I should probably improve how I introduce it because I think it is actually a contribution.
Well, it sounded like you got some use out of it. You got some utility from it. Maybe other people can get some utility from it too. So then it has value. So maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, it is a contribution. It's like it's on page 1 of his survey under the list of contributions. I think that's the first contribution is the novel classification of the literature. And it's useful and it's already got quite a lot of citations. Wang is already a pretty highly cited author, especially considering he hasn't even finished he hasn't graduated yet. So yeah, it's definitely useful.
But so your classification scheme is called STAR classification.
No, STAR stands for State of the Art Report, which is a very special track introduced by Euroviz, one of the top visualization conference.
What's your classification scheme called?
There is no name to it, I guess.
Oh,
it doesn't have a name.
It's called STAR.
I would call EHR STAR classification.
That's why I thought it was
Well,
cool.
that
Yeah.
because EHR basically stands for electronic health records, the state of the art report, which is a fancy name for survey.
Yeah, but if you got some value from it, then analyze the value you got from it. And it sounds like a thing to me. I don't remember reading that as a contribution in this. I read the survey, but I just thought, oh, it's a survey. And a classification scheme isn't the same as a survey. Yeah, it's a different thing. That was my.
That's true. Like, yeah, you could abstract it to another level and outside of the survey itself. That is possible. But yeah, page one of the publication has a list of contributions of the survey. And contribution number 1 is the classification. If you look at the actual publication.
But keep in mind that I'm not an expert in this field, so I may have got completely the wrong end of the stick here. Maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree. But Bob seems to be thinking that I'm not. So.
But there are multiple ways to look at that question. But I think all of this will be clarified, Wang, when you update your slides and you put
the word contribution on it. Yeah.
Yes, contributions. Yes, that's one of the things that both Kai and Chris are missing.
Okay.
And it's probably a blind spot for me because I'm too close. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can wrap up.
Wang, are you okay
with
the location and time of the Viva?
Yes.
What time is it?
I have to make it work. 9th
of January.
January.
I've booked
UK time.
the room for the whole of the afternoon from 12 midday until 6 p.m.
Yep.
And
that's fine to me. That's fine.
C80, which I think is that room at the end of the corridor.
Yes.
That's
where I had my interview.
I better check that because I need to be there. And I think we're probably going to be 2 o'clock for the beginning. I think.
Okay.
All things being said.
Okay.
I was just wondering if you're happy with the location.
Well, location doesn't really matter to me. Yeah.
And that's in person.
Yeah, it's fine.
So you'll be there, and the examiners will be there.
Yeah.
In person on the 9th of January.
Yeah, that's fine. There's one thing. I really need to go. I need to catch my flight.
Yes,
otherwise I'm going to miss it. Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
Today or on the 9th of January?
Right now. Right now. Like right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Wang.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
you both. Thank you, Christian. Yeah.
Bye. Well, I'll see you next month. Have a good Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah. You too. Bye.
Bye. So I wanted to ask you, Bob, about the sharing the Viva. Now that I've been through that.